Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I think today's video is probably going to be the last one that's about my first year at university. I don't think I've got much else that I can really say. I think I've covered everything that I can really review about my first year. So yeah, today's video is all about my course. I said in the last video that I didn't want to cram it into a sort of quick roundup about uni, so I decided to make it its own video. The system at Lancaster, I think I've said it in my previous videos, is that you have to have 3 subjects for first year to meet the credits that you need. So because I do a combined honours degree, I only had to pick one subject as my minor. So that meant that in first year I studied history, politics and religions in the modern world. So yeah, I think I'm just going to go through each of them separately, talk about things that I liked, things that I didn't like, what I think I could have done better as well. So yeah, I hope you enjoy the video. Before I talk about the individual subjects, I just want to share my opinion on the minor system at Lancaster. I know a lot of unis you don't have a minor system, you just get given modules that are part of your course, and I don't know which I'd prefer, honestly. I liked the idea of the minor system when I heard about it when I was applying. I really liked the idea of learning as much as I could at uni, but in practice I think it did just take time away from my other 2 subjects that I really enjoyed. I mentioned before that religion wasn't my favourite subject in the world. I sort of fell out with it partway through the year, and I did think that by the end I was just viewing it as a distraction from history and politics, time that I could have spent doing extra reading around the subject or working on essays maybe, but I think that's how I came to view it. I liked the idea in theory but not really in practice. I did like that it added some breadth to my studies, sort of, expanding my knowledge in different areas that weren't just my degree, which I quite enjoyed, but again, I do think it was more, I liked the idea in theory. There's just that much that I think you can focus on when you're doing a degree that you could do with that extra time to really find the intricate parts of the subject that you're really passionate about, and I didn't really have that time because I was studying a 3rd subject. Now I'm just going to go through each of the subjects individually and say what I liked and didn't like. History's a difficult one because there's so many students to cater for and not everyone's going to like the same period of history. I love modern history, but I really just have no interest in ancient history at all. So while I didn't enjoy first term, I also understood that it had to be like that so that such an umbrella course could cater for everyone. One thing I didn't like about the sort of time period thing in history was that it felt like they were trying to cover too big a time period in the time we had. These lectures just felt like they were trying to cover too much history, if that makes sense. I know it doesn't sound like it makes sense, but it did feel like by the end of it you just came out with a list of dates and what happened, and that wasn't really what I wanted from it. I sort of wanted to go deeper into each area even if I didn't enjoy it. The problem was as well that our lectures were 2 hours long. They actually apologised about this before we even got there. When we got our timetables, they'd said that they really didn't want to do the 2 hour lectures because it's so overwhelming, but the 2 hour lecture just sort of made it feel like you came out of it at the end with a quick recap of everything that had happened and you hadn't actually gone into any depth. That sort of links to my point that was about how it felt like it was too crammed, like too much history was going into the lectures. I don't know if that was a consequence of having 2 hour long lectures instead of 2 hour long lectures, but that was how it sort of ended up feeling. And I'm not saying that this made history unbearable, because it didn't. I still enjoyed quite a lot of the content, but it did sort of, sometimes when I was looking over my notes, it was very overwhelming and it took me a while to either sort them out, and if there was a subject I liked, do extra reading so I could add it to my notes and things like that. I really liked the way the essay questions worked in history, in that we were given a list of about 10 to 20 questions per historical era. I really liked the way this worked because even if you'd liked a tiny topic that had been covered in half a lecture, you were gonna find a question on it. And it really allowed how passionate you were about the subject to shine through in your work. There was an essay that I really liked in the 2nd term that I'd written, and I loved the topic I was talking about. I spent a lot of time on it, more than I usually would. It just showed in my work so much that I was really interested in the topic, and it was one of my best grades of the year, I think. So I just really liked that the way they gave us our essays really allowed our best work to shine through. I thought that was a really great thing from the history department. Next is politics. One of the things that had the biggest impact on my impression of the politics module was that international relations and politics were rolled into one for first year, and I really didn't like that. I said to my friend at the time if I'd wanted to study international relations I would have picked it, and it made it really hard to just want to go to the lectures and take notes well, and I didn't want to do the readings or do all the research that I normally would for essays. It just felt like two subjects that are, even though in the same field and they're related, they were just too different, and people who wanted to study one didn't necessarily want to study the other. Because of that, I definitely enjoyed first term in politics more. It was all about the practices and principles of politics, which is what I'm really interested in. It's what I wanted to study. It's what I've picked to study next year when I pick my modules. And yeah, I just enjoyed everything. The lectures were super interesting and engaging. So that was probably my favourite part of the entire year. I definitely enjoyed that more than any other topic across all three subjects. The politics lectures were also a lot more enjoyable than any other subject, and I think that's mainly because they were in 2 1-hour lectures rather than 1 2-hour lecture. They were just easier to focus on, and even though one of them was at 9 AM, I just found it a lot easier to concentrate in them. The reading for politics wasn't as good as the history reading. I definitely enjoyed it a little bit less. But again, I think this was mainly in the international relations part of the course because I just had no interest. Another thing I didn't like about politics was that some of the content just felt like very A-level-y. I felt like instead of going to the lecture, I could have just sat down and read a chapter of my textbook from A-level, and it just felt like I was repeating what I just learned, and I just sort of bored me a little bit sometimes. Obviously not all of it was like that, it was just some lectures. Again, I completely understand why they had to do this, sort of similar to history, because obviously not everyone who's picked the subject studied it at A-level, so they have to be able to get everyone up to the same level, but it did just get a bit boring for me in that aspect. Moving on to religions in the modern world, this was my least favourite subject of the year. These points tie in with what I said at the beginning about the minor subjects. I just felt so distracted by this topic. It wasn't something that I had any passion for. I've said before, I really wish I'd picked a subject that I wanted to do, which was German. I enjoyed the essays and the readings a lot more than the lectures, and that's nothing against the lecturers. Their content was brilliant and the way they ran the lectures were brilliant, but I just found that the readings offered that little bit extra, and cramming as much as you can about religion into 2 hours is quite a lot. So the readings give you sort of space and time to understand it. Religion isn't an easy subject to understand sometimes, especially when it's some of the older religions like Buddhism and Hinduism. So I really did like the readings that they gave you the building blocks of the religion without overwhelming you. The essays were good in that each essay topic related to 1 week of the lectures. So if you'd found a particular week really interesting, you could write an essay on that. And there was always an essay on religions in the modern world because that was the theme of the entire module. So I did quite like those essay questions. I enjoyed looking at the implications of religion in the modern world, and I think that was what drew me to the topic in the first place. But I didn't have the interest in the foundations of the religion, and that was what put me off. I think politics was probably my favourite topic of the year, and that was just because of first term. I think that it was what I really wanted to study, it was what I'd found interesting at A-level, and going a bit deeper into it was what I'd really wanted from starting uni, and I don't think I got that in history or religion. The point of this video wasn't so that I could single out lecturers or anything or comment on their teaching styles or anything. I had nothing but admiration for my lecturers. It's not an easy job, and getting all of that content into these lectures, again, can't be easy. And they were all so knowledgeable that it was incredible. So this was nothing against my lecturers at all. I admired them all fully. It was just my impressions from the course, the way it was structured, things I liked, things I didn't like. This wasn't anything personal against any of them. I just wanted to share my experience about my first year. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like I said, this is going to be the last one in my series about my first year. I really enjoyed reviewing everything that I could about first year. It reminded me of some of the things that I'd really enjoyed, and I liked sort of reflecting on why I enjoyed uni so much. Not only did it help me, you know, remember the good things about first year and think about what I can improve on, but it also reminded me why I'm looking forward to second year so much. I hope you enjoyed this little series that I put together. I know I enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I hope I see you in the next video.